Welcome to Indiana News Desk. I'm Joe Wren. For the past 2 weeks now, we've been telling you about issues with Indiana's public defender system, and they're not unique to this state. The entire country is facing what many legal experts refer to as a public defense crisis. As the increase in drug use and the resulting crimes bring more cases into the system, states are struggling to keep up. Reporter Barbara Brosier joins us now with the final installment in our series, Justice for All. So Barbara, what's the solution?
Good question, Joe. It depends on who you talk to. Here in Indiana, experts say there needs to be more accountability to ensure counties are providing adequate public defense to defendants who qualify. Some say creating a statewide system is the best solution, but even states with that setup face some of the same challenges. The sun hasn't been up long in Carrollton, Kentucky, but Sarah Wiedenhafer is already well into her workday.
I think ultimately the big draw for me is that it's an opportunity to give back.
Wiedenhafer works as a public defender in Kentucky, which has a statewide system for indigent defense called the Department of Public Advocacy. She's one of 11 attorneys who works out of the Boone County office, and today she's spending her morning in Carroll County District Court.
So no change in the bond, Your Honor?
The majority of the people appearing in court today are Wiedenhafer's clients. She bounces from one case to the next, greeting each person with a smile and asking the judge to consider setting or lowering the bond for clients who are currently in jail. It's dizzying to watch her manage it all. And while she makes it look easy, she says it isn't.
I think the biggest issue is always going to be managing the time with the demands.
Wiedenhafer handled so many new and old cases on this day, we couldn't keep track of them all. According to the Kentucky Department of Public Advocacy's annual report from last year, the number of new trial cases has jumped nearly 15% in the past 10 years. The state's governor proposed a budget last year that would have added 44 more attorneys to help deal with the increase in caseloads, but legislators slashed it from the budget, so caseloads aren't getting any easier to manage. Last year, Kentucky public defender caseloads averaged about 55% above national standards. It's an issue public defenders across the nation are grappling with, regardless of how their system's set up. But the Boston-based nonprofit Sixth Amendment Center says a statewide system like Kentucky's is better than a state like Indiana's because it provides more oversight of public defense services. The center listed several recommendations to improve Indiana's public defense services, which currently vary from county to county.
The level of justice people receive very well can depend on what side of a county line your crime is alleged to have been committed.
The report says Indiana's public defense system is inherently flawed because it both institutionalizes and legitimizes the choice of counties to not fulfill the minimum parameters of effective representation. Counties are free to, and do, forego state money in order to avoid oversight. Some of the other recommendations include creating a mandatory training and supervision system and a system to ensure compliance with all standards. It also suggests creating a statewide appellate defender office, which is something Illinois has. But some question whether adopting a centralized public defender system is best for Hoosiers.
I think that every county by size, by the nature of its population, rural, suburban, urban, has different situations. And I think that anytime we try to do a state down, one size fits all thing, we run into the possibility of waste. We run into the possibility of overshooting the runway.
Bud Herron is part of the 3-member Public Defender Board in Bartholomew County. The county created the board last year and tasked it with coming up with recommendations for improving the public defense system here.
We have, by estimate, 200 more cases that moved through in 16 than moved through in 15 that required public defenders.
Bartholomew County is trying to be proactive about the problem, especially after hearing about the lawsuits filed in Johnson and Allen counties, alleging their systems are violating people's constitutional rights through inadequate representation.
We don't want that to happen here, not just because we don't want the expense of it, we don't want the possibility of retrying cases that were considered not adequately represented. We want to do it because it's the right thing to do, and because the people deserve this.
rather than going all in and complying with the Commission standards in order to qualify for reimbursements. The board is recommending Bartholomew County fix what it already has in place. Here, judges appoint one of 11 part-time public defenders to handle cases. But under the board's recommendations, that would change. They want the county to hire 2 more part-time public defenders, as well as a chief public defender who would oversee and appoint them. They say it could eliminate any potential conflicts of interest.
It's something that neither the judges nor the attorneys want to be involved in, just because it casts an ethical cloud over our judiciary. And if there's anything in this country that we need for sure to have the very highest of respect and the highest of accountability, it's the judiciary.
Heron says the biggest hurdle is getting the county to approve the funding needed to implement the recommendations, which would cost thousands of dollars. And that may be the biggest challenge facing the system as a whole. According to the most recent information available from the Department of Justice, in 2012, state governments only spent $2.29 billion nationally on indigent defense. That may sound like a lot of money, but in reality, it's only 10% of their judicial budgets.
We can always use more money, more people, more space. We're out of space.
The Monroe County Public Defender's Office has one of the most robust systems in Indiana. The office has 15 full-time attorneys on staff, but Chief Public Defender Michael Hunt says it wasn't easy to get here.
When I tried to get into the state reimbursement program, it meant that we needed more attorneys to meet the caseload standards. That required the county council to hire more people, and I got I don't know, 3 or 4 years of pushback where they wouldn't let me apply until I basically had saved enough money from fees we get to hire a couple of attorneys.
Hunt says he can't speak for other counties, but he's pretty happy with the type of public defense provided here. Because Monroe County has a public defender office, there's also support staff to help with the time-consuming tasks associated with defending cases, like hiring an investigator. That's a luxury many counties in Indiana don't have.
So the only purpose for the stop would have been the expired tax.
Back in Kentucky, Wiedenhafer says that's one of the biggest benefits of a statewide public defense system. There are more resources for attorneys representing the indigent here.
I think there is absolutely an argument to be made that the state-run system provides more consistency, if from no other standpoint than the training that we as attorneys representing the defendants receive and the expectations that are on us as far as trying to advocate their best interests.
So, Barbara, is there any indication whether legislators plan to take this issue up?
Well, Joe, they actually discussed this issue this week during a summer study committee. The Indiana Public Defender Commission says that it wants to increase reimbursements to counties. Now, we mentioned in a previous part of this story that it reimburses counties for up to 40% of the cost of felony cases if they follow state standards for things like caseloads and training requirements. Only a little more than half of the counties in the state do that. They want to increase it to about 50% reimbursement for all indigent cases, and they think that could give them another enforcement tool.
There's no funding for misdemeanors in the state of Indiana, and because there's no funding, even though the commission exists, there's no oversight, there's no enforcement.
So they're hopeful that by offering that additional reimbursement for 50% reimbursement for all indigent cases, that more people will buy into the standards and come into compliance with caseloads. The commission also announced that it's forming a task force. It's going to meet for the first time next month, and it's going to consider some of these challenges that we've talked about with public defense in Indiana and hopefully come up with some solutions.
All right, and all 3 of those segments on our website if anyone missed any of those.
Yes, and
right?
a special will be airing on August 24th at 8 right here on WTIU.
All right, thank you very much.